Oh, hello.
Hey,
How are you?
good. How's it going?
Good. Yes, hello. And you're live on YouTube, by the way,
All right.
to give you a warning. Let me see.
Finally made it.
Let me see the hat. There we go. All right, I'm going to get my cheat sheet for your book. So I'll let
There you
people.
go. You got the Ronda Rousey poster next to the Casablanca poster. It's
I know.
perfect.
I thought I'd do this in my bed because for the spring last year, I gave my daughter my office for her school. So this is where Writing and Fighting came out of. And yes, that's pretty much me, right? Would you say?
It's a perfect combination. Yeah, the Ingrid Bergman and the Misha Tate.
Yes. I've been thinking of updating because I have a couple other, I have a Mike Tyson one, but that always it's a pretty scary one. Okay, 1 second. I'm going to get my Writing and Fighting cheat sheet. And we'll see people come in. Class doesn't start technically till 4:05. So
Oh, okay.
So I'm not that far away. Coming in. How are you doing, Josh?
Great. Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna
just waiting for spring. It just doesn't seem to come.
Yeah. I'm gonna print a new one. Oh gosh. All righty. Hi, Emily. Hey, Owen. Welcome, everybody. You know, I'm so prepared, aren't I? I'm looking forward to do. Okay. Here we go. I've shared this discussion sheet, Josh, with several book clubs.
Which discussion sheet is that?
The one I made for Why We Fight. Because someone asked for I guess there's a fighting in Toronto. There is a combat sports, martial arts book club. And they reached out just because we knew that it was on my syllabus. And so I sent her my discussion guide, and then she sent it to some others.
That's fantastic.
Yes. I want to get my royalties for Why We Fight here.
Yeah, so do I.
And I want to know, maybe with my students here, we can figure out what what project you're working on now, or projects. We can get Why We Fight 2.
No, that's it. My fighting is done.
No,
Didn't make for much of a second book.
we're not going to do like the Fast 9 or whatever it is at this point. Got it. Well, I think people are coming. And if you have a good connection, I know we are very much Zoom fatigued. But since this may be, I know you guys have other classes, but this will be my last remote, knocking on wood, class, because we are going to be going into in-person in the fall. I would love if anyone wants to put their camera on, just so I can see your faces. Again, I know it's hard. Thank you all. And I'm so excited about today's class. I'm going to introduce our special guest, who you guys are intimately and knowledgeable about because you've been in his head for the semester. And I just lost my book. Okay. There we go. But first, actually, to get to know, because we're wrapping up the class, I'd like to go around the Zoom room, the old Brady Bunch, and check in. And I thought what we could do is we could talk about maybe one thing you've learned in this class, whether it's about writing, about your writing strategies, about research, or the fight game and combat sports. And then maybe one thing that you're looking forward to post-vaccine, when we come back in person. All right. Do I have a volunteer? Or should I lead things off? Emily. And also say your name and where you're from.
Okay. Hi, my name's Emily. I'm from Vermont. I came into this class knowing nothing about the UFC and boxing and stuff, so I feel like my knowledge has grown exponentially. I can now explain to you what happens when they're fighting, and I know the knowledge now, and I'm explain it to my friends, which I think is cool. And then the one thing I'm really looking forward to, it's pretty simple, besides the movies, going to the movie theater, is just like coming back and being able to see my friends' faces without their masks on, because I just miss faces. Like, I don't know. It's very simple, but I just miss seeing people, like the whole person in person,
The nose and the mouth. Cheeks. They're good. Thank you. Emily, can you pick the next person to go?
Owen Bish.
I'm Owen. I'm from outside of Philly. In this class, I've learned how strategic fighting really is and how much thought really goes into it, like pre-fighting and stuff like that. What I'm looking forward to when we get back to in-person is probably just in-person learning and just being able to have like true discussions and like in-person discussions with people.
Yes. The simple things in life.
Yeah. Wilson.
Hi, my name is Wilson. I'm from California. Mine is similar to Emily and Owen. like I don't really like watch sports or anything like that, and not knowing anything about like combat sports. And I learned like a lot of things about like MMA fighting, just like sports in general. And next year I'm looking forward to like interact with people in person and just like communicate with my professors in person. So yeah.
Me too.
And I'm gonna send it to Grace.
So, hi, I'm Grace. I'm from Southbury, Connecticut. It's like an hour to New York City. And I've loved this class. I just had a meeting with Professor Kidder yesterday. And I loved doing the different writings, the creative writing. And just like Emily, I didn't know a lot about fighting before coming into this, but it's something I like got really fascinated by. And something that for like next semester, I'm just excited that we'll be like in-person classes, not a lot of Zoom fatigue, any of that. It's too much. I'll call on Linda.
Yes, so hi everyone, my name is Linda and I come from China. And in this class, I really learned about a lot like about support, like the boxing and the MMA, like same as Grace, like I don't know too much about like fighting or something that related to sports like before. And in the future, I want to just keep getting in touch with the professor. Also, like go actually watch a game, like a fight game, probably. Thank you.
Live, hopefully.
Yeah, you're going to do a field trip at some point, Nancy?
Oh yeah. When we're in person, we're gonna go to fights, to gyms. We'll just be roaming DC.
Good. Yeah. Never sit down in a classroom again.
I know. I know. Thank you, Linda. Can you pick someone to go? I think we have Yifan, Yulin, and Claudia.
I'm gonna pick Claudia.
Hi, so my name is Claudia. I'm from Philadelphia, and for this semester, I really, really enjoyed this class. I was not at all educated about MMA fighting or boxing at all, but after this class, I've become very invested in it, especially with the assignments, like my favorite one, the creative writing assignment. That was really fun for me to do. And in regards to next semester, I'm a theater performance major, so I'm really excited to finally be able to do shows in person and not over Zoom anymore. So that's exciting.
I can't imagine how tricky it's been to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yafan, have you gone?
Yeah. So my name is Ifan Yang, and I came from China. I also do not know well about the MMA and fighting, so it is very interesting and refreshing for me to learn this course. And from this course, I know something new about the martial arts. So I think I will learn more in the future.
I love that. I don't mean to make you fans, but I do love that you've discovered the passion that we share. All right. I think I'll pick Yulin, and then Nazar, you're gonna be our last one, and then Josh, you don't get out of this either, So Yulin.
Yeah, so my name is Yulin Liu. Or you can call me Jack, but yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it's always master. So, well, I don't have any experience about MMA, or I don't have that much knowledge about MMA or UFC, but I have learned Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a while, for about like 3 or 4 months. Yeah, pretty like a freshman or something. I think I will pick them up since I took this course, and then I know much more about Jiu-Jitsu. I do a lot of research. So yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Yulin. Jack, thank you. And Nazar.
Well, I love the UFC. I'm a big fan. I tend to watch a lot of the fights and stuff. Even throughout the semester, I enjoyed writing for all the assignments. You got to pick your own ideas, your own topics, and then, you just use your creative mind to create like a story.
Great. No, and I've enjoyed it so much. And Nazar, I asked, what are you looking forward to, back in when we get to be in person?
Just being in a classroom, honestly. Kind of sick of being online. I just want to be in the class and just, learn.
I know. I completely agree. And then Josh, why don't you go and then I'll introduce you after, but I have to say what I love is that, Josh, can you imagine like the only things you're looking forward to in college are seeing people's noses and mouths and being in a classroom?
I know. It's really bizarre. It's really, really bizarre. It's
so
totally
Sorry, go ahead.
very different from my college experience. I saw faces all over the place and never wanted to be in class at all.
Well, the fact that being around people and grabbing coffee and being in a classroom, that those are the risky behaviors that you haven't been able to do. You guys, I have to say, you guys have been troopers, all of you, adapting to all of this. And, guess what? It's when you get back, in person, I think you guys will appreciate it, unlike any other generation. Okay, Josh. What?
Hi, I'm Josh. I'm in Sussex County, New Jersey. And I'm really looking forward to sparring again. I haven't been in a gym or sparred in a boxing gym since March 13th, the morning of March 13th, 2020. And I miss it terribly. So that's what I'm looking forward to most.
I love it. No, I'm the same way. I guess to round out the whole thing, what I've learned is that my students teach me so much because of their perspective and the way I see them connecting new things. At the end of the class, I'll talk about, we're putting together a pain and combat sports panel with Kyle Green. And then we're actually bringing in the athletic director of AU, or the assistant, I think it's Sean Dash, to bring in perspectives about pain. Pain, obviously, it's a feeling, a biological feeling, but there's also, we've all discussed this, and you guys brought it to light, the sociological element of connecting as warriors and feeling in your body, and even the seductiveness of it, that it can become an addiction. So, Josh, you're welcome to attend. It's Monday at 4.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating.
But that all came out of our really great discussion where I'm like, I need this conversation to continue. So thank you guys for always kind of propelling me forward. And what do I miss? Man, I miss traveling. I miss looking, and it's not even the actual place. Of course, I'm going to do that, but it's like looking forward to doing something. So that's what I'm for. All right. Well, Josh, I'm not even going to look at any notes. I'm just going to introduce you with your bio based on.
Can you do it from memory?
I think so.
All right.
Tell me. I hope I get it all right.
I mean, considering every time you've ever announced me, you've gotten my college wrong.
I know.
I'm skeptical.
I know. Wesleyan.
You got it right.
I got it right. I know. Okay, so Josh Rosenblatt is obviously the writer of Why We Fight. Before that, he worked for the Austin Chronicle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all right. As well as some other other kind of print journalism, and then was the editor of Fightland, which is was under the Vice network. And we have been so fortunate to have you because you also, I would maybe call you an interesting thought leader. You've also contributed to the Washington Post and other things. But what I really appreciate is that you expand the lens of combat sports to include biology, history, philosophy, psychology, and all to figure out why we fight. How was that? Was that good?
It was great. Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah,
Yeah.
really good.
All right. Well, as I mentioned, this is our last class, so let's make this, let's not have any rules. Let's let this conversation go wherever you want. Spoiler alert for those of you who haven't finished the book yet. Josh, you won.
I did. Yeah.
Fun. I know.
Are there people who haven't finished the book yet? Is that where we
I
are?
hope so. I told everyone to. Do we want to? You know what? I haven't gotten this. Can I show them the fight? I forgot, or because I've done that to you a couple times now.
Yeah.
Can I show it to them? Did anyone go online and look at fight up?
I only saw the pictures.
Oh.
I didn't find the video.
Yeah. I will find it. So
in the meantime, can I ask a question?
Please.
Because I was fascinated when listening to all you guys talk about how, except for I think for Nazar, it seemed like there was sort of not much familiarity with MMA and boxing beforehand. So I was just curious why you took this class. Are you guys writers, or were you sort of interested in fighting but didn't know if you were? What made you guys want to take Nancy's class?
Emily.
I wanted to do something out of the box. I love writing. I might minor in creative writing. I'm not sure yet. And Professor Kidder had really good reviews. So I was like, out of the box and great reviews. So that was big. And so I decided to go on a limb and just try it out.
Very cool.
I hope I lived up to the Owen.
I kind of have a background in basketball and baseball in high school, so I was kind of looking for like a writing class that would interest me in that way, because I haven't been able to have that in like a year. So I think that's the main reason why. Also the good reviews with Professor Kidder.
Are you a writer, Owen?
No, I'm not really. I'm a political science major, but it was like to fulfill a requirement. So, but it was a very interesting class.
Cool.
Yeah. Be honest. Some of you guys had no idea it was writing and fighting. Raise your hand if you didn't know. See, Nazar, and you're a fan.
Yeah. Well,
you must go ahead.
I didn't even know this was gonna be like a fighting writing class. Like when I was like trying to find a writing class, I do it like based on like teacher like reviews. So your reviews were up, so I was like, I'll pick this. But once I found out the class was writing, I was happy because I got into like UFC when the Corona started. So it was like a perfect time.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's why I think I'm doing good on my papers.
I love it. Well, no, and by the way, you guys are all writers. Own it. And Nazar, I actually am jealous that to discover UFC in COVID. I hope you guys, I know some of you I've been talking to about have gone back and watched old fights. Emily went back. Josh, she recently watched the Ronda Rousey Holly Holm fight.
Ooh.
You know, some of those just great things. So how many of you guys would consider yourself like you're going to follow combat sports MMA in the future? Oh, there you go.
I'm so intrigued on where boxing is going because of all the new consumerism driven like I call them performances because like that the last fight between Jake Paul and that was rigged. But I'll be tracking that.
It's very strange what's going on with boxing right now. It's very weird that boxing is being kept alive by YouTube and influencers. Like that's where the money's coming in. It's really, really strange. I can only imagine, because I was never, Nancy, you were much more of a boxing purist and enthusiast.
Yes,
but I was never that. I can't imagine what it does to you to see boxing reduced to that?
I don't want to like put our class into that mode. But for me, it's hard because I understand that they're trying to get numbers and they're trying to keep the sport alive that way and Emily, you've kind of done research into this, into, the numbers of YouTube followers they're young, they skew young. And, but it's just when a former Bellator champion and one champion gets knocked out by a YouTube guy individual, Mr. Jake Paul, what does that say about our sport?
It's not great. It's not great. Whatever it is, it's not
because
great.
It's either that, hopefully Ben Askren just didn't train, but then as Emily pointed out, is there, other things going on?
Yeah. So you definitely think it was a fix, Emily? Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching some of Ben Askren's fights and like how many punches he could take to the head, and it's just like that one punch, I don't think, even regardless of not training. And I think he was just in it for the money. He got his money and he walked out. Owen agrees with me. And like the amount of like performances prior and like the famous people there, they had like the D'Amelios there, and they're like super famous, like younger girls that appeal to children. It was all like marketed towards children. It was, yeah, I think it was rigged. I think it would have went further than first round knockout.
Yeah.
No, it's I don't know. I'm so not conflicted. I just know that I tried to watch boxing like last summer when we only had the UFC, and then they put on was it ESPN or Showtime? And the mismatches of those fights when they're like the odds are in the thousands, and either they're a mismatch or it's point fighting, and they're just not giving us the narratives of the fighters because they pull these fights much later to the time of broadcast, so that's not good, and the ratings were abysmal for those. I don't know. I do hope, that we can get something, Tyson Fury, and I don't want to be talking this whole class, but we have Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua. Do you guys know about that fight? Which would be the unification. What do you think, Josh? Don't you think it'd be great to be able to say who the heavyweight champion of the world is?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so bizarre because I'm sort of writing about old boxing stuff, and I'm sort of like keep going back to the list of the heavyweight champions because I just need to know. So I just keep going back. I can't remember the particular order, especially this time in the 1930s. It was literally like a guy would win a fight, he would win the championship, and the next fight he would lose. The belt went back and forth really, really fast. And it was just bizarre to think that there was a time not so long ago where you just had one belt. Yeah. And you knew who the heavyweight champion of the world was. And I don't really understand how they ended up with 4 belts in boxing, what all those different organizations are. But yeah, I mean, from a sort of, I would imagine it has something, that probably is one of the reasons why boxing has sort of fallen out of favor, because how do you root for one of 4 champions? It's a lot easier for people to get behind the story of someone if that person is the number one person. At the same time, I don't know, like when you look at boxing and the fact that it's not centralized the way the UFC is, from sort of a social standpoint, it's probably a lot better, because what you have with the UFC is you have one person making all the decisions and making decisions that are bad for fighters and bad for fans, and and when you have a decentralized system like boxing, maybe it makes it a little bit better for the fighters themselves. I don't know. I just know that I think it loses a lot of its romance when you just start handing out belts to people and you have all these different organizations around.
Yeah. No, I think it would be great because when you think about Muhammad Ali, he didn't have 3 other people he was competing with, and that was and that's one of the reasons he's the GOAT. he was the king of the world.
Yeah, I just don't know. Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think obviously he had like just talent and charisma to burn, but at the same time, when you've got 4 people with belts as opposed to 1 person with a belt, then how does the media know who to pay attention to?
Yeah.
And the narrative gets sort of diffused. But again, there are advantages to both. I mean, what's going on in the UFC is, especially in terms of how fighters are treated, is kind of unforgivable. But there's no one there to regulate it and modify it and challenge Dana White's supremacy. So that's a problem too. Boxers have a lot more say than mixed martial artists do.
Yeah. So Josh, I do want to embarrass you by showing your fight. But since we're already getting into some nitty gritty stuff, how about we go through kind of the major themes of our class, or do you want me to embarrass you? Get it over with.
No, let's do major themes.
Okay, because I have a friend who he's a writer, and he had an interview with Ken Burns, who I'm a big fan of. So he's like, Nancy, is there a question you want to ask? And of course I asked 2. I told him, but one of them was based on we weren't able to get to Unforgivable Blackness, which is his documentary on Jack Johnson. Phenomenal.
Best.
It's the best. It's captivating. And you really get the full context of that fight. And what that fight is, the Great White Hope, is what, kind of is the nexus of Jack Johnson's story, which was in 1912. Jack Johnson was the first African-American champion, and he fights Jim Jeffries, who comes out of retirement as the Great White Hope. Because he was having the interview on Tuesday, I asked him like what, because he's also, they're making Unforgivable Blackness into a miniseries for HBO with Marsala Ali, and Tom Hanks is also producing, and Ken Burns. And what I can't think about is that after the Great White Hope, they had race riots because Jack Johnson won, and that kind of was upsetting to the white majority. And I wanted to get his perspective on the day the verdict hadn't come out yet, when George Floyd came out, and what that meant. And also, some of you guys have been writing about Muhammad Ali and learning about him, about how, things have changed when he was vilified when he did not go in the draft, and he changed his name. But that changed. So I guess I'll put it out to you, Josh. Do you think that this will, because sports really took social justice last year and really owned it, do you think that there'll be even more of a change?
In sports in general?
In sports, or I don't know.
In society?
In society?
Oh, man. It depends on what day you ask me and what mood I'm in. I find it very promising, and I think what's going on in the NBA and the WNBA is pretty remarkable in terms of the level of political activism, and I think it's a cause for hope. It seems like an enormous number of players, see their lives and see their destinies tied in with the lives and destinies of other people, and with social causes of social justice. I think it's pretty remarkable. That had never happened in my lifetime. I mean, there have been sort of individual athletes here and there who have been political, but never before have I seen entire leagues get politically activated that way. So, and you're seeing it in the NFL a little bit as well, and even in NASCAR. So the hopeful side of me sees it as kind of remarkable that the George Floyd thing, as tragic as it was pretty galvanizing, which is great. But the fact that we're even discussing this stuff 100 years after Jack Johnson died and 60 years after Muhammad Ali was kicked out of boxing for refusing to go into the draft. You know, the fact that we're still having these discussions is indication enough of why one could probably be skeptical. You know, again, I think it's really important that the line, but for people to say that there's a line between sports and politics should exist. I think it's really important for that to not be the case. I don't know what the results are going to be in the long run, but I'll tell you this, it's kind of remarkable. A couple of years ago, when, you know, right in the middle of the Trump presidency, and there was so much pressure, I think it was probably around the time that they were doing when Trump was sort of going after the NFL for all the kneeling, that ESPN said that they were shifting and they were going to cut politics off of ESPN, and they were only going to talk about sports, and they would talk about politics only if it directly related to something that happened in the sports world. And which was just such a cynical thing to do and a delusional thing to do. But when the George Floyd verdict came out, I followed a link that had a bunch of, you know, that was a link to a story about how athletes were reacting. And I went to ESPN, and the main headline on ESPN was Derek Chauvin found guilty, not athletes respond to Derek Chauvin found guilty. It was as if ESPN was a news site saying, it was as if you were on NewYorkTimes.com or CNN. It was saying Derek Chauvin found guilty of murder. And the fact that that the world turned that quickly from 2 years ago, ESPN saying we won't be covering anything related to politics, to putting the news story of the day up on their website. It's not that I'm optimistic about what corporations will do on their own. It's just that it's pretty remarkable to see what happens when you have that kind of pressure being put on organizations. There are just certain things that can't be, you know, they can't be denied. And when you have that much strength coming out of what's going on in the streets, it's very refreshing to see. It's very heartening to see. I'm 45 and I've been cynical such a long time that I'm dubious, but seems like there's some hope in the air. Does that answer your question at all? I know we're talking about boxing.
Yeah. Anyone have? I would love to know if the class has thoughts on this about, because we've talked about sports diplomacy with like the ping pong diplomacy, which, you know, the Chinese and Americans started playing ping pong, so we brought the nations who had not had connection for like 20 years. That was able to bring it back. So there are some good things with sports, and very good things actually. But what do you guys think about that in terms of sports and politics? Because the counter is, I want to be able to watch my game and not hear it, right? Shut up and dribble. Oh God. I knew it. I hate quoting Laura Ingraham. So I
know.
Owen and Emily.
I wrote my op-ed on sports and politics, and I talked about how like Colby Covington, how he is very openly like pro Donald Trump, and that how I believe like he still has the right to talk about whatever he wants to, as long as, because he's like criticizes other athletes for speaking out, like LeBron James especially, he's like gone after him for speaking out. And so that's kind of where I draw the line. Like if you're gonna be a hypocrite about speaking out like that, then don't. But I think everyone has the right to speak out and voice their political opinions no matter what.
Let me ask you something, Owen. This is something that I was thinking about when the Colby Covington was sort of at its peak, and it goes back to it's kind of related to like the Jake Paul thing, or what puts butts in seats, or what puts dollars in pockets. Like I think there are certain people that look at Colby Covington, or maybe they disagree with everything he believes, but they look at what he says, and their answer is always the same. It's like, well, you can't argue with it because you love him or you hate him, you're going to buy tickets to see him, and it's marketing, it's successful marketing. And I remember a couple of years ago, Nancy had a roundtable discussion. We were talking with a guy who used to be a marketing person for the UFC, and we were just talking about this issue. So do you think, just for you personally and politically, like regardless of what specific politics Colby Covington has, do you like, where do you draw the line? I mean, if controversy always sells, isn't that just, does that mean we're always on a path toward getting more and more controversial, scandalous, offensive, at the expense of, like, it doesn't even matter at a certain point what the value is or what the meaning is or what the quality is. It's just, if you can just speak loudly and be controversial, you end up with Jake Paul being the most famous boxer in the world, right?
Yeah, I definitely think like their involvement, like it definitely stokes division. And I think with Colby Covington, for sure, he definitely plays to the people who view the UFC. Like I feel like a lot of people who, I don't know, but I feel like a lot of people who watch Colby Covington fight are watching him fight to see his pre-fight stuff and his post-fight interviews and everything like that. So he's definitely a marketer. I agree with that, but I feel like like LeBron James, I don't think he's doing it for marketing reasons. I think he's legitimately trying to push a social movement sort of thing. So I think it differs athlete to athlete.
Sure. Were you gonna say something, Emily? Sorry.
Yeah, you were tying it.
That's my
You
first.
are.
I'm being
You
a
are
teacher
actually-
here.
How about you take over? That's fine.
Okay.
You
all
were
left homework
You were talking about controversy, and you brought up the Jake Paul thing for I could, but the guy has like sexual assault allegations against him, and they're like allowing him to have a platform and make a lot of money. And it's like, why are they picking the super controversial figure to represent the sport? And it's just, it baffles me. I understand why they're doing it, because controversy sells. Like Jake Paul is he's such a figure, and kids love him, but like even adults will pay to watch to see like what's going on, and like kids are going to pay to watch to be like, oh my god, it's Jake Paul. But like he is so controversial for my age group especially. And then going back to the politics and sports, for some reason I see there's certain groups of people that are up in arms about only certain types of politics in sports. So when they say no politics in sports, they're very explicit, because someone can bring up Trump and Blue Lives Matter and they're completely okay with that, but they're not okay with certain other issues being represented. So I think a lot of this no politics in sport mentality comes from a really defined set of privilege, because some people can't separate entertainment and politics, because politics directly affects who they are in their lives. It's like it's all encompassing, because every election hinges upon basic human rights at this point. And it's like, there can't be a separation, in my opinion. And the people that are like no sports and politics is just an inherent privilege. And when they say no sports and politics, no politics and sports, they mean no politics that I don't like in sports. And it's just, that's super apparent. And I agree with Owen, there's like a lot of people that are hypocritical with their stances. Like you can't kneel, but someone can come out and be a Trump supporter and wear an American flag and stuff. And it's just like, there's one group that's really upset, and then there's one group that's not. It's like, come on.
That's a really good point. Well put. Yeah, I always think about it like it's even, like it's one thing to say, that people say it's political to kneel before the flag during the national anthem, and that's political, as if having a national anthem and waving a flag isn't political as well. I mean, there was a time in this country where you didn't play the national anthem before sporting events. I mean, that was for a long time, that was the case. I mean, I don't remember, Nancy, when it was, but I mean, before 9/11, I can't believe I'm talking to a generation of people that were not alive during 9/11, but before 9/11, like at the seventh inning stretch of a baseball game, you sang "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." And then after 9/11, suddenly you have to sing "My Country 'Tis of Thee" or some patriotic song in the seventh inning stretch. And we act like the first day God put basketball on the earth, there was also a pledge, you pledged allegiance to a flag. These were all political decisions that got made somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
But that's a really good point. Yeah.
Going in from politics, I mean, we have so many places to go. I'm just thinking about what's come up in our class, and especially like which connects to your book. Why don't we just go into it? We have an in-person full capacity event happening with USC in 2 days. And why I'm bringing it up actually is, and I'm just going to show your video. I've been, teasing it, but why I'm bringing it up is the idea of, I think you called it consciousness, like a transcendent consciousness.
Transcendent?
Am I saying that right? That you get at a live event. And also when you see other people, having this experience. I'm trying to get this to go full screen. All right.
That's an interesting point though, Nancy, that you're making, because if like a lot of your students are saying is that they just started watching MMA this year. Even Nazar, who's a big fan, said you said you started right at the beginning of the pandemic, right? So like, it's a generation of fight fans or potential fight fans who have never seen fights take place in front of an audience. They know it as the silent sport that we've been watching for the past year. It's really fascinating to think of fighting being that's the baseline for people who are getting into the sport now. They're used to seeing two people fighting in a perfectly quiet room.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because we've discussed this and there's been back and forth between, does it matter that there are no fans there? Some people like it better. I know you yourself.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
You can hear the corners. It's, it's more about the actual people in the octagon or ring, and it's not about the crazy people with the signs and what's going on or who's in the crowd. However, you make a point of when after, this great end of the fight, what it meant to have your family and your friends and what that kind of created, because this is something I'm also fascinated by, is like this moment where you've bested someone with your body and won something, a feeling that many of us never get their whole lives, how much that has not been part of the fight game. So let's just watch it so I can go. We're almost to the end, right? And you guys remember, Darius, there's a good kick. Do you remember this, Josh?
Are you watching in slow motion?
I am.
Oh, wow. You can see all my extremely flawed technique and all its detail. Do I remember this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you remember it like beat by beat, or is it kind of one big?
I remember sections. I don't know if it's, I remember particular, like I remember there that I thought he was going to grab me again and being terrified of it. But I remember being against the fence, and I remember him punching me for the first time. And I remember punching him I remember punching him for the first time, because that was the first time I punched anyone ever, really.
Wow. And did it hurt your hand?
No, I didn't get hurt. I didn't feel a thing. The entire time, even when I was getting beaten up, I didn't feel a thing. Thank God for adrenaline.
Yeah. Thank God.
I didn't feel anything till much later.
Wow. Adrenaline, I think, is going on. Cortisol. It's so weird to watch it like this. Are we getting towards the big finish?
I think so. I mean, it was a pretty short fight, so we're always close to the big finish.
But
I will say what you were talking about is very true. My saying that I prefer watching the fights with no crowds, that's as someone who's watching on television. Being in the fight, the crowd was a huge part of it. In terms of a transcendent experience, I do think you need a huge part of it was being in front of that many people.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's how the fighters feel.
So, he dodged right there.
This is very exciting in slow motion.
It is. It's, I feel like I need the music, like the the Rocky music, some sort of like really overpowering symphonic.
It's very, very
going on.
dramatic. Yeah.
Because I think we're getting close, and I'm curious.
I think it's right here.
All right.
It is, because I recognize this because I've watched it 400,000 times.
Here we go. And so then, wow.
And I like this in slow motion. Yeah.
I do too. Can you tell us though, because we got to hear about Darius and his instructions, and this was like a reactive thing that you had done in the gym a billion times?
The jab, jab, cross. Yeah. I was
Jab, cross.
Yeah. Keep it simple, right?
And he was so open.
Yeah. I mean, like I say in the book, it's sort of a common truth in boxing that you're at your most vulnerable when you're being offensive. That's when your defense is most vulnerable.
Yeah.
So I just got, kind of got lucky that he was coming in as I was coming in. And, fighting is just a matter of milliseconds. And I was just a little bit faster in that moment.
And you knew he was out. Like, it didn't look, you didn't have to finish him. Did they not have that in whatever promotion you were at?
There was no ground and pound.
So
they divide it up. Like if there's amateurs, but then there's first, super amateur or whatever it is. The first couple times you fight, there's a different set of rules, and there's no ground and pound for first timers. So when he went down, my first thought was, what the hell do I do now? Because my instincts were to jump on top of him and punch him, because that's what you see in MMA fights. But I wasn't allowed to do that. And I know he was a much better grappler than I was. So if I went down on the ground and tried to do a jiu-jitsu move with him, that it would have been counterproductive. So thank God the referee stepped in, because I would have been standing there with probably a confused look on my face. like his look.
So now we're going to this must just feel great. And, I know at my age, I can't really train to do something like this, but to have that arm raised must be.
It's the best. It's the best. I can't deny it. It's the best feeling.
All right. So everyone go read the book to see how that all comes about out there. But I want to open this to the class. Like, this idea of transcendent consciousness. Do you feel sometimes that that's something that's been missing, is the not just being the I, but the we? And you get that when you're in a team sport or watching a movie or concert. And I think that fighting is one of them, got to be the best. Oh, and you said you do sports, you do, basketball. Did you have those moments when you're a team? Do you have that feeling where you lose your sense of self as a?
Yeah, for sure. So I played basketball, but my main sport was baseball. And my junior year, we won the state championship in Pennsylvania. So that was definitely a team celebration more than an individual celebration. So for sure, there's definitely that team aspect to that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm just gonna be honest about this Saturday. I don't want to be seeing people, because I don't think we're there yet. We're getting there. Josh, I know you've gotten you got the J&J. So you're one and done with your shot.
I got the one and done, yeah.
One and done. I know that you guys, a lot of you told me you're signed up and ready to get yours. I think we're now at 50% of people have one shot, which, is good. But I think it would have been safer to wait a month or two when the mask is not as needed as a public safety precaution. And I think I've made this clear. I also, how I hope that the athletes are vaccinated, because they're going to be in an enclosed environment with people yelling, basically the recipe of what creates spread. But I think that this is Dana White wanting to show the world that he can do it. And I have to give him credit because he did keep fighting alive during COVID. Anyone else? Owen?
I just have a question for Josh. I just want to know like your opinion on Dana White, just overall.
All right, Josh.
I can't stand Dana White. I mean, that, you know, I think he's sort of a reprehensible creature, and I think he's a, you know, I mean, he's a good promoter, but I think sort of fight promoters by nature are sort of amoral human beings. And, you know, that would be fine if he were, you know, if he were just sort of an amoral human being. The problem I have with Dana White is the contempt he seems to have for his own fighters. It's one thing to brag and be loud spoken and make money decisions and to be a Trumpist and the whole thing. But what I can't understand is his contempt he has for his fighters and the way they treat their fighters. He's not the first person to run a company that was anti-union, that was anti-labor, that was anti-worker. You know, he's not breaking a mold, but his contempt for his fighters, if they do anything, not even that they talk about starting a union, if they do anything that he feels like is an attempt to diminish his power in some way. I just find it a remarkably disrespectful thing to do to the people who are literally sacrificing their bodies and their lives to put money in your pocket. It seems like there's got to be a way to be a fight promoter and still treat people with some basic respect. That apparently is not the way for him. Yeah, there are a couple things, you know, it's not easy being an MMA fan. I mean, there are a lot of things about loving it. There are a lot of things you have to deal with in MMA to get through to the parts of it you love. And Dana White is one of those things. He's just the medicine you have to take. He's the poison you have to take if you're going to love mixed martial arts. He's just going to be there. But you sort of have to, I just sort of keep my mouth shut. I don't keep my mouth shut, but it just sort of, it's something I have to swallow. It's something I made a deal with myself, I guess. I just love the sport so much. I love watching the sport so much. And he's the guy who gives me the sport. So I made a deal with the devil, but it's what, you know, in this world, what are you going to do?
Is it possible to have a benevolent fight promoter though? That's kind and pro fighter?
I mean, yeah, sure. You have to be the kind of person who doesn't need every single dollar in the world to be in your pocket. I don't care that much about having lots and lots of money. I just doesn't, it's just not something that I never had lots and lots of money. So maybe once you get lots and lots of money, suddenly you care about it a lot more. It's very possible. But I know that if I were to start a fight organization, it wouldn't cross my mind to say I can have $107 million instead of $106 million if I make sure that all the fighters who fight for me are making less than $20,000 for a fight. I mean, like I'd like to think I would never make that calculation. And you know, the terrible thing about it is that I don't think think it's monetary. I think it's probably a way to keep people in line. Yeah, I would like to think that there's a way to do it in such a way. I mean, you look at something like the NBA seems to be a relatively decent sporting organization. But in order for fighting to be decent towards the people who fight, they have to be unionized. And in this regard, there's nothing original about him. He's like any CEO of any company that's ever existed ever. He is rabidly anti-union and will continue to be anti-union until fighters force him to deal with them as a collective. And until they do that, you know, they're going to be the figurative crabs in a barrel, just tearing each other apart to get to the top and to try to get out. And none of them ever will. That's story as old as time, right?
Yeah. And I'm curious what you guys think, because one person who you think that got out of the fight game would be like a Floyd Mayweather, who didn't bring anyone else along. He, he does have his fight. What is it? Team Money or something. He has other fighters, but is it true he's going to fight Jake Paul?
The lesser Paul, I think.
Logan Paul. I can't.
If there could be a lesser Paul, I think he's fighting the lesser Paul.
Okay,
is that right?
Emily.
Jake Paul's the lesser Paul.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
I didn't know these guys who they were until they got into fighting.
We need my students to give a seminar for us, Josh.
Yeah, seriously.
Stars and
they're two brothers that have made really bad decisions and uploaded them to the internet, and like very controversial decisions, like really messed up stuff. And that's gotten them in a lot of hot water, both of them. And they're very controversial, and they gear their content towards children. It's not appropriate.
God.
So it's controversial and geared toward children. That's
So
this is the problem with the click-based economy, right?
Yeah.
Because people will click because they like you, and people will click because they hate you. There's no qualitative distinction between the two. It's just a click.
It's unbelievable. So Logan Paul is the lesser of the boxing, though, or is he is just as good? Are they equal? I mean, they're just both.
I think wasn't Jake Paul the pre-fight for Logan Paul versus KSI. Owen, do you know? Yeah. So I think Logan Paul is supposed to be the better.
Okay, so Logan Paul. Now
Logan Paul's the older brother, so I think that's why he was the main card, and then his fight with Mayweather is like an exhibition.
Okay.
So
okay.
It's purely for money, and they're just
like the Roy Joe Jr.'s Mike Tyson fight, which I watched. I was having a conversation with some friends, and will I watch these things outside of COVID when I can go to dinners and stuff like that? I don't think so. But in COVID, I was like, I'll watch Mike Tyson and Snoop Dogg. Josh, you probably didn't. You're more highbrow than me.
Yeah, very highbrow. Very. I watched highlights of the Tyson fight.
So it's not a real match. But Floyd Mayweather, you got to give him credit for, I know someone's writing about the McGregor Mayweather fight here. Is that you, Owen? Are you? No, but someone else is. How he was able to make that a fight and make it that we were hoping that was going to be a real fight for him. We that McGregor, who had never boxed before, but he's able to create this hope, I guess. And he's defensive. He's kept his brain intact. And, I don't want every boxer to go that way, because I think that's, there isn't that. I will take like a Mickey Ward, Arturo Gatti, like, where it's they've watched that fight, by the way, round 9 of their first fight.
Yeah. Where
it's just, going at it, and it's, probably not good for brain health, but, which we've also talked a lot about, in terms of, the brain and what's going on. Especially, Josh, I'd love to hear what you think about with, fighters, because we've talked about the intoxication of the fight game. How do we get them to leave the fight game at the right time?
Yeah. That's the $100 million question. I don't think you can. I mean, between the sort of financial predicament so many of them find themselves in at the end of their careers, especially in the UFC, where they haven't made enough money to live. And they're probably, if they're that good at fighting, they probably have not done that much else with their lives that would make them sort of, give them a lot of marketable skills after their fight game. And they're going to be 35 years old. They've got hopefully 50, 60 more years of life left. You combine that with what I got a very, very, very small taste of, which is that ecstatic, transcendent feeling you get when you're in there doing that thing. and the comparison to what life is like when you are not doing that thing. It's amazing. Sometimes it's amazing to me. I see these fighters fight, these old fighters, and your first thought is, I can't believe they're still fighting. And then part of me can't believe that anyone would ever stop fighting. Not that they shouldn't stop fighting, but it's, between the needing money and having a taste of that thing. I mean, I thought about it. I mean, I was 40 years old when I fought my fight. I was never going to be good at fighting. I was never going to make a career. No one was ever going to pay me to do it. I had made a very reasonable deal with my wife that I would do it one time. There was never a thought in my mind that I was going to do it again. And then I fought. And then for the next 6 months, all I could think about was I should do that again.
Yeah.
Because it's like when you got that kind of like high experience, something that deep and just sort of overwhelming, it's hard not to get back to it. And which is exactly what, it's why, how many fighters, it's like they either stay too long or they get addicted to drugs. Like, it's like, of course,
yeah,
the worst ones stay too long and get addicted to drugs, but that makes sense too.
Yeah,
it's hard to fill that void, once you've created that hole in yourself, it's hard to fill it up.
Chasing the dragon. Oh, and this is what you're writing about, right? Is this third act that happens. Have you found anything to add to that, like why, or what we can do for fighters?
Yeah, so I'm kind of, for my paper, I'm focusing on Joe Louis and sort of his like post-boxing career and sort of why the struggles happen.
Dark.
And yeah, I think education, like if they're gonna be involved in like the UFC or the boxing organization, have them go through like some kind of education, whether it's just a program or something that teaches them the dangers of many different things and sort of educates them and teaches them about what they're really getting into with head injuries and stuff like that, just so they know what's coming. But it's hard to really think about, like, because it's so different for each fighter with their post-career issues, that it's hard to make a big, like, just one change that would fix that. So I'm not really 100% sure.
Yeah. Josh, also talk about like kind of the darker sides with, like, we have your chapter on your injury and how the injury part kind of gets you when you lose your community and you're injured, that puts you in another state too. So it's almost like you're going, the highs and lows are pretty hard. Okay, so then this is my other question. Talking about pain, were you not addicted to the pain, but what did you feel like when you would get hurt? And like, did you feel that it was like part of boot camp, that I'm being initiated and this is what the fighting world is?
No, it was a pleasure. It didn't feel like I was molding myself morally. It didn't feel like something I had to get through. I'm not that person. I don't like being disciplined, and I don't like having my character improved. It wasn't that at all. I took real pleasure in getting hurt, and I mean, and again, this isn't within reason. I mean, I've never once got seriously injured, so it's keeping things in some perspective. I mean, a bloody nose, a black eye, a hurt arm. I mean, or one broken finger. But it's not like I was ever really, really injured. But the kind of injuries that I was getting, or the kind of pain I was getting, I found very, very pleasurable. Largely because I think that I'd spent so much of my life dodging those things. Which also meant that I was going to say something else and I've completely forgotten it, but um, yeah, it was pure pleasure. It always was. From the first time I sparred, when I got over that initial fear of sparring, it was never not a pleasurable experience. The lack of pleasure, the pain and the suffering and the stuff that I had to do, which did feel like that sort of character creation, the running, the dieting, the cardio, that sort of stuff is miserable. It serves no purpose near as I can tell, but it's those things you have to do to actually get in a ring and fight. But the actual fighting, the actual getting over fear and the actual getting hit in the face, it was pure pleasure. There was no virtue in it at all for me. You know, it was like as pleasurable. It would be like saying there's virtue in eating chocolate or smoking a cigarette, which maybe there is.
It's interesting you bring up weight cutting and these other kind of things, because we've talked about weight cutting in our class, and still understand that, you know, it's putting these fighters into such a perilous condition right before. But I think you brought it up. You quoted, I think, was it Norman Mailer, about how it actually, though, maybe having this hungry, angry person, what you get from being dehydrated and forcing yourself into this condition, prepares you, though.
Yeah, Norman Mailer's he's a smart guy. He writes really, really well about this stuff.
Yeah.
But I think he was absolutely right that I think that there is something to be said for the sort of psychological transformation you put through yourself through physical deprivation. I don't think that there's a way to, you know, that doesn't justify modern weight cutting, especially in MMA. I think the way weight cutting is done and the fact that weight cutting exists is absolute insanity. I mean, it's completely insane that you have two people that walk around healthy at, say, 200 pounds, both cutting weight down to 170 pounds, ruining their bodies to have to be the exact same weight. It's completely insane, and I think it should be done away with. There's enough stuff, physical self-sacrifice one goes through to be in a fight, that one doesn't need the weight cutting. You're already going to be denying yourself all kinds of good foods just to be in shape, just to be at your physical peak. You're going to be in all kinds of pain and suffering from just training all the time. I mean, to be the best you could possibly be in a situation like that, and to spare yourself as much misery as you can, you're going to put yourself through hell for that, in that sort of Norman Mailer way. It's going to put you in that headspace where you're more inclined to want to punch another human being in the head. I don't think you need to literally drain your body of liquids to simulate that. Just put yourself in camp for 8 weeks and deny yourself booze and food and cigarettes and the company of a woman or a man and all that stuff. And by the time you get in a cage, you're going to want to punch someone real hard. And also, that's what you do. You're a fighter. You punch people in the head. You don't need to hypnotize yourself. I mean, I love Norman Mailer, and I love the way he writes, and I love that he has ideas like that, but they're totally romantic notions. And I'm not against romantic notions, but when it comes down to it, there's a romantic notion for someone writing a book and someone reading a book. And then there's the romantic notion of someone who does this for a living. And someone who does this for a living has no romantic notions about cutting 30 pounds of water weight in 7 days. There's no poetry to that.
No. Yeah, I agree. So Owen, Emily, Linda, Yulin, Grace, Claudia, Nazar, Wilson, Yifan, I think I said that right, Jack, or no, Jack is actually Yulin. Oh, so sorry. Ask questions. This is your time, you know, also about the writing process. You know, I think I've told you that Josh, he is a believer in procrastination.
So, yeah, and an advocate. Yeah,
and embrace it.
Yeah, I mean, evangelical. Yeah. Yeah. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to talk about anything.
Because I can just keep going on my Emily.
How long did it take you to write your book, and what method did you write it? Because for me, I do brain surges. Like I sit, and when I feel like it, I just do as much as I can, and then I stop, and then I come back. Like I don't sit there when I don't have anything to write. So how did you go about that?
I've never heard that phrase brain surges before, but that you just described exactly how I do it. Yeah, I write when the mood strikes me and when the muse comes to me. Like I mean, I've read tons of interviews with writers I love over the years, and they're talking about I wake up and I write from 6 till 10, and then I eat breakfast, and then I take this walk, and it's very sort of almost militaristic. It's very regulated, and that seems to work for them. And I think I may have tried that a couple of times, and they, some of them say, once the workday is done, I don't allow, like Ernest Hemingway, I think, didn't allow himself to even think about writing after the workday was done. And yeah, I'm like you. I when an idea comes to me, I figure I got to jump on it, because I've had enough experience in my life, whether it was writing or anything else, where an idea comes to you and you don't pay respect to it, and it punishes you by going away. I sort of see it as like, I think there was an Emerson quote about like creativity or inspiration is like burning embers. And if you don't tend to those burning embers, they'll just go out. So if an idea comes to me at 3 o'clock in the morning, or it comes to me at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to sit down and work on it. I just, there's nothing in my life that has ever been scheduled or disciplined. I've never been able to work that way. So I figured there's no reason to make myself work that way as a writer. And to answer your first question, I had to get the first draft done in a year. The contract said the first draft had to be done in a year. And then honestly, the writing went pretty well. The excruciating part of the process was I turned in the first draft and didn't get my draft back for 4 months because my editor had other stuff to do. And like that's the time when like I had no idea what to do with myself. The fight was over, the writing was over. I had nowhere to put my, like I was so wonderfully focused on so many things that I loved doing. And then suddenly all of that was gone. And it was just staring at walls. And I didn't know what to do with myself. Hopefully I'll do it all over again. And if I do, and I'm smart about it, I will have another idea lying in wait after I send the first draft in. I think that if I've taken it, now it's not even taking advice, but just seen confirmed in my own personal experience, the writers who are like, I turned in my thing and then I went home and I took one day and I had a couple of drinks and I hung out. And then the next day I got back to work. That's what I would do. Not out of any sense of discipline or anything like that, but just because it's so much, like the fighting was so important to me. And then our writing was so important to me that to suddenly have nothing that I was like actively doing. I'm not talking about like relationships, but like that I was actively doing that could simulate that was just, it felt like having like the rug completely pulled out from under me.
Well, Josh, can I recommend an idea?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Well, I mean, this is not, well, the MMA musical.
I do have to write the musical. That's right.
No, I have a lot of actual, not that that's not serious. I also think it's so interesting, Josh, that you tell us that you're not disciplined, yet I would ask Darius that you have to be disciplined in a fight camp.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not self-deprecation. It's not that I don't work hard. It's just
I'm not saying that, but
yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I guess what I was, at least in terms of what Emily was talking about, and in terms of the writing process, it's just, I guess it's not regulated. I guess there's discipline involved, but it's not the discipline that comes from setting a schedule and adhering to the schedule. It's really just a matter of dropping everything and jumping on it when it comes. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, training for a fight is a remarkably disciplined thing, which is why I did it once. I mean, I couldn't live my life that way. I mean, it's no surprise to me that so many fighters are also sort of like, sort of have a sort of military bearing about them, like this desire to stand in lines and be at the same place every day and go to bed at the same time every night. That's just completely nonsensical to me.
Yeah.
It's totally a foreign language.
And Emily, I think that this is something that I love connecting writing and fighting. If you ever get the flow, because Josh, you can maybe talk about this, the flow in fighting. I've heard some fighters call it like you're in the Matrix, that bullet scene where everything slows down and just things come together. The writing flow is when I'm so absorbed in that moment. I haven't gone to the bathroom in hours. I haven't, where you found that space. Sometimes it's hard to get there. And so I want you, Josh, to enlighten them on your procrastination, how you use it as a tool.
Sure. But I will say that it's a very good point that you made. And the fact that I'm drawn to fighting and writing, the fact that I'm drawn to those two things, as opposed to dancing and rock climbing, it could just as easily be dancing and rock climbing. Exactly what you're saying. Those two things happen to be my transportation devices to get me to what I would describe as mindfulness or some sort of meditative state. Like what you're saying, where you're so lost in writing that the time goes away, or you're so lost in fighting that you feel like time slows down. And it just happens that those are two things that get me there. But it's the getting there that's the thing that I love. Yeah. That's the thing that I'm looking for. As much as I do love writing and as much as I do love fighting, they just happen to be the devices that get me to that place that where you really do feel like you are existing entirely in a moment, and all other sort of distractions and all other thoughts just sort of fade away. And I consider myself very fortunate to have two things, and then that's some other things that are sort of less work based. But I think that's, for me, that's the only thing I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Those are just the means.
And then, so in terms of, I feel the same way. And then, old movies gets me, I don't know if it's in the zone or a great escape. And
Sure.
But I'm just fascinated with your procrastination, in that if you have a deadline, sometimes you allow yourself to get closer to that because you know that the pressure is going to do something with your brain, in that it will force that flow state to come even sooner, or it'll come based on it's got to get done.
Absolutely. I've always been this way. And it's why it worked out so well that I was a journalist for so long, because you're always working on deadlines. And why it was the hardest part about writing the book was the deadline was a year away. But yeah, the pressure of the last minute, the pressure of the possibility of failure, like literally not performing the task that you're supposed to be performing, I find those to be remarkably inspirational and motivating things. If I have 3 weeks to write something and I spend the entire 3 weeks writing it, I will be very relaxed. But in my experience, what I write is not nearly as good. Maybe it's not true to someone reading it from the outside, but when I read back something that I've written in that way, I feel like it lacks blood, like there's no energy to it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if I write something in one night that I've put off for 3 weeks, the terror that I felt while writing it comes out in the words. And I'm a really big believer in energy. And I like writing that's energetic. Writing that's too beautiful, but that just kind of sits there on the page, does nothing for me. Like, I admire the hell out of the New Yorker. I don't like reading the New Yorker because it seems like it's like watching a Wes Anderson movie. Everything is beautiful and in its place and sculpted and in the frame and perfect. And there's no vitality to it. And there's no life to it at all. So yeah, I don't even think about writing things until the deadline is approaching. Never. I might take notes, I might do some research, I might think about it, but I wouldn't put pen to paper until the last possible minute, just because I want it to feel like it was life or death.
Yeah. So you heard it. This might be a little controversial in the writing studies program, but about,
Controversial sells tickets. Controversial gets us clicks.
You're right. But I do think there is something with that. I've always tried to give myself fake deadlines if I can. But your brain knows like this isn't real. So that's why I trick my students in that I have them do stages of writing, like a pre-writing. They have to do a proposal, annotated bib, and then I'll even make them start a drafting class just to kind of get that urgency going.
Right.
But I understand. I'm with you on that, having a lot of open, time or something. I need something. But I also.
It's so fascinating to me that, like, even with writers like I've fallen in love with, who's like I admire so much, to find out that they write in literally the exact opposite way I do. It just is so many ways to do it. I remember there was a writer that I had at Fightland who was he was a beautiful writer. And I watched him write the story. He was sat next to me in the office. He didn't write only for me. He worked for Vice, but I watched him start work on a story he was writing for me, and he would literally write. He was like Flaubert. He wouldn't go on to sentence number 2 until sentence number 1 was perfect. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't even know what I'm writing about until I'm 3/4 of the way through the first draft.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's just putting words out there, and the idea comes to me through the process of writing. It doesn't come to me through the process of thinking. So the idea that I would just like type out a sentence and carve away at it until it was perfect and then move on to the next one, it seems like a great way to write a series of sentences that have nothing to do with each other. But he wrote great.
Well, no, I agree with you that, some people work in different ways. That linear model, which I think about the days it's a typewriter. I can't imagine you had to have all your thoughts in a row because the amount of time to erase or go backwards.
Oh, yeah.
But, I firmly believe, though, have a bunch of different tools to reach from, because every kind of writing project is going to be different. It's going to need something different.
People love to romanticize typewriters, and they love to romanticize pens, and they love to denigrate computers. But I think we're living in the best possible time to be a writer. Absolutely, because I can spill it all out on the page, and then I can copy and paste and highlight and move stuff around. And it's brilliant. The idea that you would write something I love. I just finished another Jane Austen novel. I love Jane Austen. I think she's one of the best writers ever to live. How she wrote when she had to dip her pen in ink every 15 letters. How did she hold an idea? I have no, like, my admiration for her, if she wrote these on computers, would be sky high. But the fact that she did it in that way, it just seems like insanity. But I think it's good. I think we probably write in a different way because we have the technology that we have.
Well, I think we are actually past time.
Oh, wow.
Thank you guys for staying. One thing I want to say to you guys, and then any final thoughts or ideas, is that I have you guys do creative writing in the beginning, because I do think literature is important. It's how we pass meaning that's conveyed. Like, you're reading Jane Austen and learning about the social mores of Victorian era, and how she's able to pass that down. So I also challenge you guys to keep writing. We need more combat sports literature. We have Fat City, Leonard Garner. We need more. Josh, are you doing any creative writing?
You mean fiction?
Fiction?
No, I don't know how to write fiction. It's completely beyond me.
Oh, well,
but it's true. We need. There are very few. There are a couple really good boxing novels and short stories out there. I can't think of there's the complete lack of quality writing about MMA, especially in the fiction realm. someone's got to do something about that, or write a good movie. I would love to see a good MMA movie. It's never happened, but
That's not the professor who gets in the ring and you have to fight a family member, right? That's like
exactly. It can't be just some white guy who needs to save his house or get his wife back.
Yeah.
It can't be that.
Well, you guys, this is the last class. Please, I know, keep in touch. You know, my alums are very important to me, and you know, I hope, you know, I'll be inviting my alums and my friends like Josh to other panels this summer, and just keep in touch. And then if I ever, you know, not if, when we do a road trip to a local promotion or something, I will always keep you guys on that list. Any final thoughts about fighting?
I will say this, just based on what you're saying, that if, like, to the people in the class who actually kind of got interested in fighting through this class, when the world opens up again, seeing, like, even if it's a small amateur event, probably even better, like seeing a fight live is just, it's a different level of thrill. Like, it really is. A boxing match or a amateur MMA fight, it really is. Like, to be that close to things is really a different kind of thing. And when the world opens, that's one of the things I'm looking forward to, is when the world opens up, is being able to stand near a cage and watch even two lousy fighters fight. It's just a different kind of experience. It's really fun.
I know. No, and you, especially you get closer and in an amateur, like, local promotion, and you can see the level of how people improve too. So
Oh yeah, and you get, I mean, it's the same thing with seeing, like, minor league sports games. It's just so great watching, like, they have like a really bad singer doing the national anthem and really bad performers in between fight. I mean, just, it's like, and you know, everything about it is great. It's so much better than, like, you know, 70,000 fans and you know, jumbotrons and the whole thing.
Well, I guess that's it. Thank you so much, Josh.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. It's great to see you guys.
No, I do think it is compelling, just the sport itself of combat sports and boxing, you know, learning about it and learning its history, but to have this as their guidebook going along is, you know, that's also pivotal to this class. So thank you.
It's a total honor that I get to do this, and you keep choosing my book. I really appreciate it.
Welcome. All right, take care, guys.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Professor.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank
you so much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.